hi everybody. Welcome to today's meeting. So we're doing a little podcast meeting. It's Mike Stevenson here from Turbo 360. I'm joined with my good friends Mitch and James from West Coast Cloud. So do you guys want to do a quick introduction for yourself?
Yeah, can do. You want to go first, James?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Here you go.
Hi, Michael. So I'm James Reed. I'm the Azure Sales Manager here at West Coast Cloud. I'm in charge of the commercial element for all of our partners, educating and helping our partners grow their Azure business.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then, Mitchell G. So I'm one of the Azure Sales Specialists here at West Coast Cloud. So I work under James, sort of more aligned to that sort of partner success level, working with partners to ensure that they're utilizing Azure and some of the sort of wraparound services that we use, such as Turbo 360, to help achieve success.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. So I think what we wanted to do today was have a little session where we'll chat about some of the new features we've put into Turbo 360, and we wanted to, primarily let the West Coast customers get some visibility of some of the features we've been adding. James and Mitch are going to ask questions that some of their customers will probably ask. They know, they've got a deep understanding of how their customers use Turbo 360, so they can really champion on behalf of those customers and ask the kind of probing questions about how customers may use the tool. So West Coast are one of our favorite customers at Turbo 360 because they've got a lot of MSPs who use Turbo 360 and are having some really brilliant success making sure their customers are getting great value for money on Azure. So guys, we'll share the screen and I'll jump in and I'll just give you a bit of a lap around some of these new features we've been adding. And I think at the end we'll talk about some of the stuff coming up in the upcoming release as well.
Amazing. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks. So here we've got Turbo 360 homepage. West Coast customers predominantly are using the cost analyzer module, so we'll jump in here. And one of the first features we've added is support for JIRA. So when you're using Turbo 360, you're going to configure alerts to come out. So I'll give you an example of where you might use that. So if I go to my Document 360 team, and in the monitoring here, we'll configure alerts to come out if I've got a problem. So if I break my budget, so here I've set a monthly budget. And basically, a lot of customers are using emails to email the help desk system and log a ticket, but we do have support for channels down here, and we've got support for things like Teams, ServiceNow, and a bunch of other channels. And the channels are configured up in the top settings here. So here I would add new channels. You can see up at the top here, I've got support for JIRA, so I'll choose that, and then I can configure how to authenticate to JIRA, which product and which work item type and project you want to push the notification into. So actually, this is really handy for a lot of customers where sometimes you might want to ticket to the help desk system, sometimes you might want more of an alert to a user, so things like Twilio and that are down the bottom. And I think what quite a lot of customers do is they may push like a sort of friendly nudge to Teams, and they may use our escalation policy and say, if nobody deals with the incident within an hour, let's log a proper ticket. So that's the enhancement here. We had quite a few customers were asking us about JIRA, so that was a good one for us to add.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in people asking about these integrations as well. I think we've got a few people already utilizing Teams as a notification channel, but I'm hearing like ServiceNow more and more, so more options is only ever a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're really keen to hear from particularly your customers about, because I think one of the things I love about you guys as a customer for us is you've got this wide range of MSPs who a lot of them do a lot of similar stuff, but they'll all have these little variations about how they might do certain bits of work. So it's a really good way for us to get good feedback about other types of notification channel, which is brilliant. So next up, we'll go back to Cost Analyzer, and we'll talk about one of the new features we've added, which is this reports section over here. So basically, what we're trying to do here is build some pre-baked reports that fit certain use cases. So you guys know really well, we've got the analysis section with all these interactive graphs and stuff. And there's 5 different reports available. So you'll see 4 of them here on this screen, and there's one special report that's only available on the root node currently, which I'll come on to in a minute. But basically the idea of these reports is I want to let your users be able to generate something. Probably at the end of the month will be the most likely time you'll use these, and it'll give you that historical snapshot of what's been going on. Now, your MSPs may choose to share these with customers as well. So a couple of examples, and I'll show you an example of each one. So the cost summary report, I turn this on, I can configure when I want to have it generated. This little checkbox at the top lets me have a link where I can download the report direct from the email, or you can have a link to me. You go into Turbo 360 to get it. You can click a button to generate it now, and then any history would be shown up here. So for example, here, if I download this, we'll basically get a PDF here, and it's really like a super high level summary of how you're doing last month versus this month. So we'll get that cost comparison and some of the key subscription level changes that you might have had. And the intention of this would be, it's that snapshot that you might, your business development manager at your MSP might just give the customer a report that says, look, here's how we're doing. And this report's white labelable as well. So if any of you guys wanted to change the logo here in it, for example, you can put the MSP logo in with that if needed.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. I think that's something that people are already utilizing quite a lot within our partner base, using the analysis tool of having reports that kind of go out once per month. So I've noticed he's been added, but I haven't looked at them yet. So yeah, I think that's exactly what most people are sort of already trying to do themselves using analysis. So handy to
have. So next up, we've got the potential cost savings. So here, same sort of idea, slightly different reports. This one's based around the advanced recommendations. So here, imagine we've got the right size and reservation recommendations. So we'll get a summary at the top here for right size and about how you do and what are the potential savings, and then a list of these potential savings that you could action. So we've got things like the resource, what the action is, what the potential saving would be. And it's a really, couple of good cases where if you're sort of wanting to give something to your customer now to show them some of the things that you could do, this is exactly that. But also month over month, taking a snapshot of this report should show the improvement in the number, the number of recommendations should be going over down over time if you're implementing all of these.
Cool.
Now we then have executive summary. So this is one we actually had this sort of in the product previously, but it was a little bit hidden away. But it was a really sort of powerful report for us, and we wanted to kind of get it in, and we, kind of before we built the report module. So we've actually moved this into the new report module, but we've also done a few enhancements with it as well. So I'll just go through this. So we'll just download this. So this is going to basically be a PowerPoint slide deck, and my intention is your MSP, customer, etc., they want to do some kind of presentation to their manager or to their board team or whatever about how things are going. So here we want to generate some slides that will take away some of the effort of putting that PowerPoint deck together. So I expect most users will probably want, maybe not every slide out of this, but different users will want different slides. And we want to just let you go, right, I'll have these 5 slides because they matter to me. There's my deck ready. So we've got things. Sorry, do you have a question there, Mitch?
It might be better I ask it at the end, but I do have one just on this that I think will provide a little bit of value to people watching.
Perfect. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. So the first slide's really how am I doing last month versus this month. We've then got the top subscription changes. So that, maybe the top 10 that have either gone up or down. I think with these two slides here, this one and the next one, what we don't want to do is obviously you don't want to slide with too much info. So we focus this on the top 10 services and subscriptions. We've then got your accumulated cost as you've went through the month, the forecast costs for next month, summary of your monitoring. So I think this is quite interesting, where we look at how many violations have you had for anomalies or budgets, and also what was the budget at the start of the month and the end of the month, which I think is quite a good one, because often people will break the budget and they might just keep turning the budget up, which you maybe do or don't want, but at least here you'll have some accountability when you present this. We then have this budget planner slides, brand new. So this is quite cool, and I'll just take a second to explain this one. So in Turbo 360, we've got this budget planner feature here, and what I want to do is give you the opportunity to sit down with a user and answer this question: what does our cost look like for the next 6 months? And what happens is they'll sit and put a spreadsheet together and then have the discussion, and then they throw it away and forget about it. And here, this becomes the living plan, where the blue bar is what I spent each month. This little squiggly line here is a ranged forecast of where we think your costs will fall based on past performance. But the problem is you don't know about the new projects you haven't done yet. So this is where the user can come in and configure this red line here, where we can say, next month we've got a new project with all these new VMs. Here's how much we expect the cost to go up by. So the red line's really your plan. And the idea would be, as an MSP, you might come in sit down with your customer and go, right, let's plan the next 6 months cost. And you might say, we've got fixed values for the next 3 months. And then month 4 to 6, we're not thinking of that far ahead yet. So we may just ballpark 1% growth month over month. And then we might come back to this and update it every quarter. So we think this is a really good way of ongoing thinking ahead. And what happens in this slide deck is, we have this budget planner slide, and there's 2 key columns in here. So the first one, the planned cost, is basically the red line, and then you get a little tick or a cross based on whether you are within budget or exceeding budget every month. So that's kind of point 1. Then the second thing is the planning accuracy over here. So what we're trying to do is we want that red line to be pretty accurate about what your actual cost is. So you might have a case where 1 month you break your budget, but actually if your planning accuracy was really high and you were like, say, 95%, you probably did pretty good. But you might have a case where you're under budget, but you're way overestimated, and your planning accuracy would be really low. So although you're under budget, you actually didn't plan very well. So we want to kind of try and keep everybody honest in a way with this slide, where it sort of shows that, if we're kind of 90% each month, we think you're probably doing quite well. But then maybe here, that one I was over budget and we had an issue that month, but it sort of shows that I was way off what I was expecting to spend.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is an interesting stat, that, because I think, if you're budgeting X amount for Azure and your accuracy is way off, then that budget could be used elsewhere.
Yeah, totally. And I think as well as that, it gets people thinking ahead, because I think everybody's sort of, they're not really planning their costs, they're just reacting to cost changes. And I think that the question should be, right, if we blew our expected cost by a long way, we should ask what we're doing that drove to that, because that says, things like our change control process might be flawed because we've obviously added some new stuff or changed something that significantly impacted our costs and we didn't realize this, and that's a bad thing. But also we might have a cost increase, and you sit down with your customer and you say, our cost went up by 10%, but if that was planned, then that's fine, because that's what you were expecting to happen. So having your costs go up isn't always a bad thing if it's something that you're planning and you're going to get value back from doing it. The rest of the slides here, we're looking at the recommendations. So we've put a few little enhancements here for things like, so a summary of my right size and little things like this right size and percentage. So out of all the resources we've analysed, what percentage of them are appropriately sized? So if I've got a lot of idle and downgrade recommendations, my right sizing percentage is going to be low. And if I've got a lot of things where I suggest no change, then your percentage is going to be really high. So that's like a trackable KPI to show you're actually in quite a good place if that percentage is quite high. And then we get...
okay, so you're aiming for 100% on that one, effectively, is what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, cool.
So you can, if you take actions like, if you sort of clean up the idle stuff, correctly size the downgrade recommendations, if you've got one that you need to ignore because there's a reason why it's over provisioned, then you can just mark that as ignore, and all of that action will help get that percentage up. But it gives you, like a single KPI that you can manage to help know whether you're in a good place or not. And I think that accountability piece, I think, is really challenging for customers because it's such a complex problem. And if we can boil these down to a few KPIs, we can track whether we're improving or not. I think it's a good one.
It's almost like a secure score for cost.
Yeah.
Is sorry, Michael, is 100% achievable?
I think so. I mean, it's going to be if you remember, these recommendations will change regularly. So, probably sticking at exactly 100% every month is probably unlikely. But if you can get in the 90s, and I think probably one of the challenges for getting there is that people look at recommendations and don't action them. So, if you go through and you correctly size stuff, and then where your recommendation is one that you want to ignore, make sure you're ignoring it. And even if you ignore it for, say, 6 months and come back to it, you can review it on a periodic basis. And all these things you can do with the tool. So, that example of ignore would be, maybe I've just gone live with this resource. We need it to be this size till we see how it works in the real world.
Yeah.
Or you might have the other scenario where I've got an SLA to hit, so I need it to be over provisioned to meet my service level agreement for this thing I'm delivering for my customer. So I might accept that it's over provisioned, and that's fine because it's baked into my contract. Then you ignore it, and that'll mark that as being appropriately sized.
Okay, that's really good. We can maybe set something like this with a partner as a let's just, if we put a number like 70% out of thin air, for example, you could have a month on month try and hit that. Really, if you're really, really on top of going through the recommendations and doing the proper right sizing.
Yeah, definitely.
You set that as like a minimum standard, like you say, with a KPI.
Yeah.
It's a good metric for partners to use. Sorry, Michael. It's a good metric that our partners can use to prove their value to customers as well.
Yeah, it's very easy to demonstrate with smaller,
stuff. Maybe there's a good thing for us here to make that number more kind of highlighted on the overview page or something. But I think you can definitely, because we've got those tree view nodes, you can target it on a per team basis as well, so you can break up the cost for different customers and different areas within the customer, and focus on maybe we say let's get the HR department to 80%, and then let's get the the finance department to 80%. So we've got right size and recommendations here. So in the slide deck, this is really the top 10 recommendations that'll save you the most amount of money that we want to just put in this slide. So there's not too much stuff here, but it'll give you a flavor of some of the things that are in it. We then have reservation summary. So we've got the same kind of idea here where we show you how many recommendations, how many active reservations. We've got the reservation coverage percentage here. So that kind of shows you, how much of those recommendations you're actually following. So if you get that percentage quite high as well, it's probably a good thing. Some of the recommendations we've got. So in this team, I don't really have that many. We've got savings plan summary. So that we have a few customers who use these savings plans, and I think they're not that common. I'm generally finding, though, to be honest, with a lot of people.
They're not.
I think people don't really understand them that well. But this is available to give you an idea of, kind of what recommendations you've got, and then The other recommendations is something I'll tell you guys a little bit more about, but we've got the top 10 sort of ones here as well. Okay, so let's jump back to the reports, and the next report's my favorite report. It's quite a complex report, but behind the scenes certainly, but we've tried to really give you a great data set to help you work with here. So imagine we get to the end of the month and we're doing some good practices, we're doing cost reviews, but sometimes there's like interesting things going on that you might not see. Imagine sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees to see some of these interesting things going on in your environment. So what we do with this report is it's going to be a spreadsheet with 4 tabs in it. So the 4 tabs are new charges. So this is usually going to be new resources that you've added in Azure, but it could be things that deployed before that you've only just started getting charged for. So maybe I haven't turned it on yet or something like that. We've then got charges that you're no longer receiving. So compare last month versus this month. Maybe things you've deleted or things you've turned off that you haven't been charged for this month, but you were last month. We've then got costs that have reduced and costs that have increased. Now, there's 2 really important things we do in this report. The first one is we rationalize to an average 30-day cost. So this lets us compare months where there's a different number of days in the month. So if you imagine in March versus February versus March, everything's going to look like it's increased because there's potentially 3 more days in the month. So if we go to average 30 days, that compares apples with apples, which means you get a better comparison. And then the other thing that we do is we can put a threshold over here. So the idea is that I'll have so many resources in my environment, there'll be too much noise and there's too much info in the report. Now, what you might want to do is just get rid of anything less than a certain amount of money. So in here, what I've configured this as is ignore anything below $20 or £20 for my cost. And that'll get rid of the noise and I can focus on these impactful resource changes. And then what you'll do with this report is you just generate it when you want it, and it'll compare the last month versus the month before. And I'll just open a spreadsheet here. So you'll see new charges. So I've got these new resources that we've added. Then if you see over on the right here, we've got the cost for August, the cost for September. So these are all new things. And we're working out that average 30-day cost difference helps me focus on things that have been added. So now nearly every customer I've shown this to has turned around and said, oh, I didn't realize we deployed that. And it's stuff that they're just not seeing getting added to the so it's really quite interesting. Things we're no longer charged for. So for instance, here, for example, we get we've got this resource here that we were paying quite a bit for, or a little bit for in this case, and we're no longer getting charged. Cost savings. So here we've got some resources here. These ones have reduced in cost. So you can see they've dropped by, top one's 120 a month. And then cost overruns, you can see we've got a few more here. And that one's increased by 102. So this is quite a good way of just like end of the month, if you want to look back and you can focus on a couple of key things. And I feel like most customers are probably going to look and see 3 or 4 things on this report every month that they maybe didn't otherwise see about what's going on in their environment. And that's really the thing that I'm looking to do here, is to prompt you to go and ask questions about what's been going on. Go to a team and say, right, tell me why we've deployed this, tell me what this is all about. And it's things that, again, the customer's change control process probably didn't catch some of this stuff, and you might go and just spot something that is much bigger than you expected, or something. That we had customers where somebody's deployed a database and they're paying $600 a month for a database, and nobody realized they were paying that, and it just slipped under the radar. So we hope to catch that with these.
Yeah, I really like that addition. Historically, that's a really hard thing to keep track of, is what's actually new. and what's been removed. We've actually done it for like before we started working with you guys. We've done it manually before, and it's horrific.
It takes ages to set up, so this is much more streamlined.
Yeah, so a really good addition. I like that one.
I think those MSPs who are doing that service offering, where they're just doing a FinOps as a service offering for customers. Fantastic report for that, because it's just going to get you right into the key insights really quickly each month. Okay, so I think next up we'll talk about a few permissions. So we've worked with you guys on a few permission adds, and I'll just show you a couple of things in the QA environment at this point, what we're adding this month. So here we've gone into the user management. So if I create a custom role, so we have these out of the box roles that cover the common scenarios, but there's a few times your team's asked us about the ability to really customize some of these roles so you can control what users can and can't do. So you can see here, we've added a few more permissions, so things like managing groups and stuff like that. We've added the option to hide some of the optimization tabs. So sometimes we've had users where you want to let them come in, but you don't want to confuse them by letting them see stuff that they don't really need to see. So you can turn off some of the tabs here that certain users wouldn't be able to see. If I'll just go into my QA environment.
Quite a common one we see there is people who want to hide something specific, like say savings plans, for example. We've got quite a few partners that we work with that just sort of steer clear of them, which is fair enough. With the commitment to the spend and such. So the ability to hide that is quite useful.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's that degree of like overcomplicating things, isn't it? Because we're trying to make it easy for people to do their job. So you'll notice in the QA environment coming out later this month, so we've added options to let you manage notification channels, which was a specific request from you guys and another customer. So you'll be able to have somebody who's not a super user admin will now be able to modify notification channels. The same with escalation policies, the cost import process. So, you had a couple of MSPs wanted to be able to see that in the background, so you can give them permission, and also manage the chart library as well. So you'll be able to add that to some of the groups that you've already created, which I think will just help make things a bit more, you'll be able to give users that extra power without having to give them super user access, which we hope will help.
Okay. More granularity here is always going to be welcome. I think with what you said earlier, we work with such a wide range of MSPs that some people are quite happy just everyone gets admin and no one cares. Other people want to be super granular with it.
So one of the new optimization features we've put in is quite cool. So I think a lot of your people may already know about the schedules for automating shut off and scale down and stuff like that. We had one of our favorite customers actually asked this request, which was kind of a variation on a schedule, but we actually decided to put it in the workflow feature because it kind of fits better there. Now, a lot of the times we haven't really talked a huge amount with customers about the workflow feature because there's only a couple of things in here, but I think over the next year it's probably something we'll do a bit more with. So we've got this thing called virtual machine shutdown. What they wanted to do here was create a job where we can set some configuration and it'll kind of fairly dynamically go and shut machines down. So what I would do is, let's say we pick this this subscription here. I can then choose things like a specific resource group. So I might pick these resource groups here. And we could also do filters for like resources with certain tags on them. And what we're going to do is think of the use case as that after 6 p.m. we want this job to start running overnight. And we'll just every half hour we'll go and check a bunch of VMs. And if any of them drop below 10% CPU average, we assume that they're not really being used, so we'll shut them down. And then the idea is kind of imagine users are using machines during the day. we don't know what time they're going to finish, but when they do, we'll shut them down. And then they'll just turn them on when they want them the next morning, because people turn stuff on when they need it, fine. And you can even have that, kind of some stuff has started on demand and that, but here the problem's that they just get left on. So what I'd do is I'd set a metric so we can say, right, let's say the average CPU is below 10% and it'll be over a certain window. So if I configure this here, I'll then configure when I want it to run. So what I might do is, let's say we want this to run on weekdays, and I might not want it to run all hours. I might say, right, let's just run this, kind of between these hours, and then I'll maybe run it from 7. So really what we're doing is we're turning this job on 6 at night, and it'll be on till 6 in the morning kind of thing. I'll run the job every 30 minutes, and we'll look back for the last 30 minutes of data. And then, so let's say, even if I deploy a new VM into that resource group, it's automatically going to get picked up by this job based on the filters. And what we'll do is any resource that fits the criteria, if for 30 minutes during this time window it looks like it's not being used, we'll just shut it down. And that was really the requirement here. So I think it's one of these jobs where it's quite a specific scenario that you're looking at, but it's slightly different to our standard scheduler. And I think you'll probably have some customers where this will potentially be quite a good fit for.
Yeah, definitely. I this is one of the questions I wanted to ask, actually, was what was the difference between this and the schedule? But you've answered that now, so I'm happy.
Great. I mean, let's just touch on the schedule a little bit, because we did add some enhancements here. So let's say we have a schedule. The key difference here is this one's much more time-based than metric-based. So here what we're saying is we explicitly have stuff turned on when it's green and scaled up when it's green, turned off when it's red and scaled down when it's red. So that's more, very fixed time, whereas the other one's more performance-based. Now, one of the things we did add here that you guys may have spotted is we added these pause settings. So this would be windows where we can disable the schedule. So a good idea would be, I've got a maintenance window once a month. We want to have the schedule stop running during the maintenance window. So I can turn this on, and I might say, right, we've got a monthly recurrence that happens, let's say second Friday of the month from 11 till, I don't know, maybe say from 10 till 11 or something like that. I can add another rule as like a one-off. So I could say on this date from here to here, we want to pause the schedule, and I can maybe do, and you can build up this library of like recurrence settings where you want the schedule to just wait and just not do anything.
Yeah, I like that, because I suppose historically you could always do this, but you'd have to manually come in and add skips.
Yeah. Well, one of the thing is, like on the weekly schedule, you kind of want it to be periodically, week over week, but you've just got these exception scenarios, and that's how you could build those. So I think one of the things we've got coming up in the upcoming release, the resources that are supported, we're going to be adding MySQL in here this month. There is a chance we may add PostgreSQL as well, potentially this month. We're just waiting for confirmation on that, but we're keen to hear from particularly people who are your customers about other resource types you'd like us to support in here. We've got a few on the backlog, but we're keen to hear, resources where that shutdown, turn on or scale down, scale up comes into play. What are the things we should add to the schedule?
Awesome. Well, hopefully we should hear a couple of bits off the back of this, but it's a question that we can be asking as well. So
yeah.
I was just thinking as well with the schedules. I might not be using it as an intended purpose here, but there's nothing to say you couldn't have the schedule tool literally just turn on a machine, right? So you could if we think about that. So if you don't mind just bringing up the actual schedule page with the green and red squares. Here. So there's nothing saying you couldn't say have everything skip apart from 9 a.m. for example.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
So you could use this as a way to reboot your machines in the morning after that new stop feature turns things off dynamically.
Yeah, 100%. And you could maybe make it where you only do it on weekdays, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you could actually have a hard stop for over the weekend, so the machines have to be. Yeah, I like that. Now that I understand what the stop feature does in the workflow section, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah,
good
definitely.
addition. I like it.
And all this will be taken into account when it's doing right sizing versus using an RI, for example.
So if you're using a reserved instance, then you probably don't want to put that resource.
Oh yeah, no. If you already have an RI, you wouldn't. But if it was, I know because Turbo does recommend, or it does the RI recommendations itself. If you've got something set up like this where it's being automatically shut down by the workflow, that would all be. Is that all still taken into account with the reservation recommendation?
Yes. So if your cost, so what we do with the reservation recommendations is if we see that the reservation wouldn't save you money, then we wouldn't recommend it. So in this case, because it's on a schedule, it's going to be turned off a lot. Therefore, the cost of what you're paying would be less than the cost.
A lot less.
Yeah. So it shouldn't show up as like a consider recommendation.
Cool. So we'll take all this into account then.
Yeah, but I think maybe a really good question or a good discussion point for some of the customers you guys have is when you have a reservation, the reservation's not tied one-to-one to a VM. So, for example, if I have a reservation pointing at a subscription and I turn off a VM, the reservation can, if the scope
feed something else in scope,
another VM. So that there are things like that coming into play. That's part of what makes these quite complicated to understand.
Yeah.
So it's not like your reservation becomes wasted, but you just need to be a bit careful that when you, for most customers, when you have the right resource that you put on a schedule, the chances are you're probably going to save more money than you would with a reservation because often it's 9 to 5, you have stuff turned on, and a reservation might save you 40%. But if you've got the resource shut off 60% of the time, it's probably better to be pay as you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, you got to think about things like Windows licensing and such that most people are paying for on a pay-as-you-go basis. Shutting it down, you're going to save money on that front. And I think that general workflow in general is important for people to understand. It's something we talk about quite often. Is right sizing, then scheduling, then reservations. I think reservations are fantastic and they certainly should be used. But I think quite often we see people fall into a trap of just reserving everything, where they could actually be saving more money by utilizing, some of the features of Turbo 360, even manually without the use of Turbo. But this just makes it so easy. There's almost no excuse not to be doing it.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So there's, I think there's 3 last features I want to try and squeeze in to show you guys if we can get this in. So number 1, in the monitoring section. So in the anomaly detection, I want to try and reduce the number of clicks to troubleshoot an anomaly. So you'll see us kind of doing more in this space over coming months as well. But right now, what we can do is when I get an anomaly at the top here, we're trying to tell you one of the resources that we think would be a candidate that contributed to the anomaly. And then what I did, let me just go back, is I've got this as clickable. So I can actually go to our single view of a resource straight from the anomaly, and we can start troubleshooting this resource here. So I can see, what's been going on with this resource. I can see the meter costs, the properties. One of the little things we added actually, a lot of your customers probably have to do change controls for customers before they can right size a resource, for example. So anytime you use our single view of a resource, you can save it as a PDF, which will give you evidence for your change ticket, which a lot of people are going to need. So you can just download that, stick it as evidence on the ticket, saves you a little bit of time and having to do all the admin and stuff. So that'll help you with troubleshooting anomalies. What was the next thing? Just check. There's one more thing, and I've forgotten what it was now.
Typical.
So I'll go to the last one. The last one I think you guys are going to really like. So I'm just jumping to one of my other accounts here. So we've been working on this tag rules engine. So if you imagine, a lot of customers have challenges about tagging their environment. So what we want to basically do is create a rules engine to help you with that problem. So you'll see Tag Manager off this top menu, and what I can basically do is I can define a bunch of rules here. So if I create a new rule, I'll give it a name. So like I usually, as a practice, I'll call it the tag name, and then tag value is the name I give the rule.
Okay.
And then what I'll do is I'll say, right, we're going to have a tag on resources where the tag, let's say it's going to be called department, and the value would be sales. And then what I can do here is I can basically build rules to find resources that should be given the department tag with the value of sales. So things you might do with this might be, let's say we've got a subscription that starts with the value 01-sales. Right, so any subscription name, if you've got a naming convention, for example, any subscription that starts with that, we'll just basically tag the resources in those subscriptions with that sales tag. You could do things like certain resource groups. You could do things like, if you've got an existing tag with a certain value, you can like do tag transformation. And the idea here is this job will run in the background periodically. So the very first time it'll run, it'll go and fill in all the gaps. So it takes a while the first time, but then each subsequent time it's just working on any deltas of any tags for resources that you've added or changed. And then basically you'll see in the background here, you can see each of the jobs that are running, and I'm tagging internally, departments, environments, and teams. And we just put these appropriate tags on here. And really what we're doing is the FinOps guys are then sort of decoupled from the DevOps guys a little bit, that the FinOps team can go and put their own tags on stuff and manage them without tripping over the DevOps team. And we've done a couple of videos on YouTube about how you can manage these tags. So if you guys have any customers want to know a bit more about some of this and some of the wider DevOps things you should think about, check out our YouTube or let us know. We'll point you to the videos. But what I'm really hoping is this helps customers do the tagging, and then in Turbo 360 you can then use graphs to group by tag or filter for tag, and you can use tags on some of the tree view folders to like kind of filter, so you can say this node on the tree is based on all the resources who have the department tag which says HR, and it kind of helps you do that cost allocation to make it easier to manage the costs.
Quick question on this. The tags, is this updating the tags within Azure, or is this a tag within Turbo 360?
Great question. So it's tags within Azure. We need the tag contributor permission for this feature to run. So if you give us the tag contributor, we can go modify the tags with this rules engine.
I can think of a few people that are going to find this really useful.
Yeah,
because this is something, as tags are so powerful, but most people don't realize how powerful they can be until they've already got 200 resources and none of them have tags.
Yeah,
and that's a huge job.
Yeah, there is, for anybody who's not familiar with this, there is a feature called tag inheritance on Azure, which we would also recommend people to look at, because what you can do is you can define a tag on a subscription or a resource group, and then it'll just inherit down into the billing data, and you can configure it so things like the resource level will take precedence, or the subscription level will take precedence. And what happens is when we get the billing data, that inheritance comes into the billing data. So there's in your customer's case there, Mitch, there might be the option of just setting the tag on the subscription or on the resource group, and then all of the resources will automatically pick it up when we bring the billing data in, which can really help. But for those people who need that rules engine, it'll just sit and do a job in the background for you, is what we hope.
Yeah, and you say this is coming soon. This isn't in
No,
the
it's
current
live
build?
now.
Oh, it
No,
is
it's
in the
live.
current build.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
cool.
been out for a few weeks.
Perfect.
So let me just check I haven't missed anything. Oh yeah, I remembered the one I was going to tell you about. Okay, so the last thing is I'm going to go back to my other account here. Okay, so in the reservations feature, we've added two little things that I think will really help as well. So if I go here, so in the advanced recommendations, we've always had this ability to view reservations here. So there's a couple of little things we've done. So one, we've added a friendly name here. So you'll all know that reservation names are really unhelpful to read and you never know what they mean. So I can just go and edit the friendly name, give it something descriptive, save it so it's easy to know what it means when I come back later. So really, really little one there. We've also added utilization over here, so you can see how well utilized they are. You know, we're really looking for a reservation to be as high a percentage as possible. I think as a ballpark, you really need your reservation to be up about 70% to break even. I think it might be 65 to 70% usually is about the break even point. But if you're not above 70, you kind of it's questionable if it's worth having it. But what we can do to help with that is in the monitoring section. So we've got two types of monitor available. So number one, we can monitor for expiry. So here we'd say, send me alert anytime a reservation gets within 7 days of expiring. So if we don't renew it, costs are going to go back up because they'll go on to pay as you go. So that'll help us there. And then the other one's about utilization. So here, if I turn this on, I could maybe say, look at the last 7 days of utilization, monitor all of my reservations, and anything drops below 75%, ping me an alert, and we can come and have a look. And then what you might do is you might take an action of change the scope. So you might, you might change it to cover more subscriptions, for example, to make sure you're getting your value for it. You might decide, there might be options to like scale up some resource if you've already paid for a reservation and you've deleted an app or something where you now have space on a reservation. You might be able to scale up some of your servers and not pay any more for them. Or you might have the option to exchange or refund a reservation. So there's like an allowance per year of reservations you can kind of refund and get the money back for. So in that case, you might be able to do that as an action as well. But we're hoping that this utilization will catch those customers. A great example I always remember is we had a customer who started and they had a SQL database. They bought a reservation for it. They'd been using the database for a while, then they made a change for it. And I can't remember exactly what they did now, but the change effectively meant the reservation didn't count for that database anymore. And what happened is they started paying pay-as-you-go for that database, but also they were paying for the reservation they weren't using. And they had that for about a year, just didn't notice at all.
Yeah, it's a common story, unfortunately.
Yeah, we see this all the time.
Yeah, so that reservation utilization monitoring is like, it means you're not just giving away money, basically. So hopefully really that'll help people out.
Yeah, it's really good. There's a couple of customers in mind that really, really benefit from this. So. Yeah.
What do you guys think of what you're seeing here? Is anything really jumps out for you?
Yeah, the expiry monitoring's a big one. We have a couple of tools on our side, but it requires people to configure them. And I think a lot of the time people don't know it's there. So I think having that integrated within Turbo 360, having those notifications set up is going to present, you even see it sometimes where someone's bill will go up and they'll sort of just kind of question it for months without ever actually querying it. And in that case, it's like, your reservation's expired and a few months have gone by that point.
So I think what I would do for your MSPs, if you probably just turn that feature on the root node as a minimum, that'll just give it for the ones that have multiple customers in the same account. That'll just give it for everything, and they'll get the internal alerts and can act on them, and then you can more target it later on at child nodes on the tree if you want to, but at least get it as a minimum, get it on the root, and then you'll at least know, it took 2 seconds to set it up, and you'll at least get the notifications you need.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I think for me, the tagging system is huge. Like, I've always been a big proponent of all Azure resources should be tagged, because the amount of, even outside of the tools at Turbo 360, just having your stuff tagged and looking at your raw data bill, it makes it usable.
Yeah. So you can use that tag engine for, it doesn't have to be just for your cost tags, it could be for any tags.
Yeah.
Which would be really good. I think the one thing you might want to just be aware of with your MSPs is just make sure they configure the rules correctly if they've got subscriptions for different customers in a single account. So you make sure you maybe use that subscription rule on all the filters, and that'll keep that sweet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I think we're just about coming up to time there. Hopefully this was a really good little session for your customers. I think we should definitely do more like this, maybe every time we do a release or something.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, we'd love to hear feedback from West Coast customers about what kind of things we need to build in upcoming releases that are going to really make a difference. But thank you very much for your time, James and Mitch, and really good questions that you guys have asked there.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.